What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Bust or Boom episode. This time we are doing the Chicago Bears. We've got a really tough schedule this year, so everything we might say optimistically about this team might go all the way back. So strap in, because this is going to be a good one.
Obviously previewing each team, key players, free agents, giving you guys a preview for them into 2021. If you guys are fans, you know how the series goes, but if you are new as well, me and Dylan have been on a lot of these recent previews. It's just because our two other hosts, one has been away for 3 weeks and the other is coming back, Surge. So we are on most of these ones, and then Dylan will not be on some. So you'll see some change. There will be other people that will do these, but if you are new, then this is your first time seeing us, so you don't really care. But yeah, let's get into the preview. So let's move on to key players. And just so you guys know, this segment is solely on players who have been on this team, who are currently on the team, who are not brought in offseason, because we will address their free agent ads and as well their draft. So impact for that. So obviously when we start key players, we usually talk about their quarterback. But this year, the two quarterbacks that will be fighting for that starting role were brought in this year. So we will talk obviously about Dalton in free agency and then Fields when we do draft. But the first key players on offense, and that's Allen Robinson, Chicago Bears wide receiver under the franchise tag. I don't believe signed a long-term deal. He didn't sign a long-term deal. So we'll most likely be leaving next season. Dylan, what does he need to do this year, especially when they are playing a lot of tough teams? If Fields or Dalton, what does he need to do to support whichever quarterback starts this year?
He needs to make big plays, and it's something he's excelled at in his entire career. He hasn't played with a quarterback that has much stature, playing with Bortles, playing with Zach Mettenberger in college, and playing with Trubisky and Foles. So he's played with some subpar quarterbacks, and Dalton is on that same level, if not a little bit better. And Justin Fields will need to see what he can do. So I think Allen Robinson is going to need to make big plays as always, and there's nothing stopping him. He always does his job. I think he's a great player who will be able to live up to expectations now, with a lot of people viewing him as one of the top receivers in the league.
Allen Robinson, again, look, one of the top receivers in the league. I would say probably one of the more underrated ones just because of the quarterback play. I think if they have a really good quarterback and there's a really good receiver, generally the reflection of how much attention goes to that quarterback goes to the receiver. But in terms of Allen Robinson, someone who's just consistently been fantastic, and someone who's really unmatchable, really good in the air, really good in the end zone, someone who can go up and catch the ball. We know is really good in contested catches, and someone who gets the yards and gets those big plays. And again, it's about doing that this year, because you have potentially the hardest schedule in the NFL, and with an offense that is not run, if it's run by Andy Dalton, is not run by a fantastic quarterback. And then if it's with Fields, he could struggle. He's a rookie. You don't know how good he will be, although I'm assuming he probably will be good. But that's going to be a dynamic I'm going to love to see, is that Fields Robinson, because if Fields is that will be a big reason why Robinson to be like, oh, we have a good quarterback now, I'm going to come back. Because that defense is really good, although it is aging. It is a really, really good defense. We'll get into some of the key players there. But I think Allen Robinson, again, it's about adjusting to whoever the starting quarterback is. If it's Dalton, you can kind of do more of your out-and-out playmaking. You don't really need to, you don't really need to dumb down your game to a younger quarterback, if that makes sense. But for Fields, it's about, okay, let me, I need to be able to catch the ball. I need to get open. So I think Allen Robinson will step up again.
For our last offensive key player, we're going with Chicago Bears newly found franchise running back, and that's David Montgomery. And I had my concerns with him last season, off his rookie season. And again, if you watch this channel, you know I've got a 2-year policy on every player that's not a quarterback, 3-year for QBs. And I had concerns about him because I just didn't see anything going his way, and I thought they were going to drop him at the end of the season. But in week 13 to 17, David Montgomery had the best stretch of form of any running back other than Derrick Henry and Dalton Cook. So I think if he carries that momentum with him, we're going to see a different type of player going into the season, and he can easily break into that top 10, even top 7. I'm not going to say top 5 because top 5 is unreal. But David Montgomery last season at the end of the year, one of the best consistent performers, and wouldn't be surprised if he did it again, because momentum is really important.
Yeah, I really do like him. Injuries has kind of been a bit of a nagging concern with him, but my kind of problem is you moved on from Trubisky, and we saw a really, really lack of performance from Montgomery when Foles was the quarterback, because I know Trubisky's a bad quarterback. The one thing he was good at is in RPOs, he could sell that fake really, really well. And when you're going up against a guy like J.J. Watt, we saw it against the Texans. We saw that 90-yard run from Montgomery. We got to the end zone. It's all about, during that RPO, can you pull away that edge defender who's not getting blocked, which leaves the hole? Or can you make him stutter or think that you're going with the ball? And that opened up holes for Montgomery, and that would allowed him to get those lanes and get really far, because that edge defender who would have the ability to tackle him would pause because they didn't know if Trubisky was going to take the ball. So with Dalton, obviously, I notably have not seen him do that very well. And then Fields, obviously, either. But again, Fields is a young guy who can learn it. So for me, it's all about, I think a quarterback change might not be the best for Montgomery, but look, 8 touchdowns last year. I believe he was injured, over 1,000 yards, just barely with 1,070. He had 247 attempts and 54 receptions. Now it's looking like Nagy's going to give him 20-plus carries a game. I believe he came out to say that. So not only for fantasy, but this guy's going to be a workhorse. Like, he's going to get the ball. He's going to get the ball, especially if Fields starts, because you need to have a bit of a backup system for when Fields isn't playing very well, or if Dalton doesn't play well, which is probably the more likely outcome. So for me, Montgomery, again, really, really elusive. That kind of, really good back who doesn't get tackled very often, very, very good at shedding tackles. Again, I think he, like you said, we don't say it much, but franchise running back, I would say he is going to need to play well to fully earn, but I say he did majority earn that last year. But Dylan, let's move on to the defense. Who are some key players there? Obviously, number 1, Khalil Mack, who I will admit, we did our PFF video. He was ranked a little bit too high for me. I think he's had a dip in form, and I think he probably won't be how he was. I know you like him, but for Khalil Mack, for a defense that has lost a good bit of its secondary, how does he need to get to the pasture this year?
I think he just needs to use what he has in front of him as almost like a decoy, because he's been playing a lot more in pass coverage, and that's not what I like for Khalil Mack. I like him getting to the quarterback a lot, like he did in that season that the Bears lost on the double doink. I think importantly for him is he needs to balance his pass defense and his edge rush, because they didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback last year. So I think he's got to start to trust that the middle linebackers will cover, like Roquan Smith, who we're going to talk about later, will cover the tight ends better. So I think Khalil Mack's got to run at the quarterback, take more risks.
Yeah, I mean, he is a beast. This guy, power, and for someone of his size, just throws 300-pound offensive lineman with one arm. And technically he had a rise of form. He had 0.5 more sacks in 2020 than in 2019. So he's done better. But, that season when he first joined Chicago with 12.5 sacks, he may be one of the best edge rushers at getting to the ball and getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands.
Yes.
Someone who just knows how to get around an offensive lineman and just not even like tackle, like just put his hand out and just like flick the ball out when the quarterback's about to release the ball. And that, again, like interceptions, it changes games. And then not only that, he also has a knack for the ball in the air. Like, he's gotten his fair share of interceptions and pick sixes. I believe when he joined the Bears, he had that pick six. Might have been against the Packers.
Against the Packers.
Against the Packers. That was a phenomenal. And I believe that was his first game there. Yeah, it was. That was a fantastic game. Like, we know how good he is. And it's about, can you maybe get 10 sacks this year? Can you get 10.5? Can you get 2 forced fumbles? Can you stop a Packers team from getting a touchdown and turn the ball to Justin Fields or Andy Dalton? So again, I think it's about stepping up on a defensive line that we know has been good, and a linebacking core that backs him very well. It's a front seven that is very, very established. So for me, it's like, Khalil Mack, go do your thing, try and get one-on-ones and just go disrupt that pocket, close the pocket quicker, because it's a secondary that's not great, which is going to move us on. We're going to skip past Roquan Smith. We're going to get to him after this, but I feel like it's a good segue to go to that secondary that lost Kyle Fuller, and I think it's a bigger blow than people think, but now their number 1 is Utah corner, who they drafted last year in the second round, who I loved coming out of the draft, Jalen Johnson. Look, physical, aggressive, had that big hit, I believe, against the Vikings. Dylan, can he take that cornerback 1 role?
First of all, great player, great prospect. He's going to struggle this year.
Right, and I agree.
They're playing excellent teams. He is not ready to be guarding wide receiver ones on all of those teams week in, week out. That is going to be a key piece of why this team is not going to win many games. Their secondary is weak. But I don't have anything against Jalen Johnson. I think he's going to live up to his draft stock, which he was drafted relatively late, and he's going to end up being one of the best secondary players in the NFC. But this season, thrusting him into that with little to no experience is honestly just throwing a kid in the fire. So you can't do that.
That was harsh. I mean, so is the NFL, though. So, yeah, it sucks because he was really probably the best rookie corner last year. The top two guys, C.J. Henderson and Okudah, were not good. Were not good at all and injured. And Jalen Johnson stayed on the field and was good. Someone who established himself as a really, really good kind of yin to Kyle Fuller's yang. I'm using your word, Dylan. He was good. He was a good, solid cornerback. Someone who, again, to me, is still that cornerback 2. I don't think he'll be able to step up to a cornerback 1 role. Look, prove me wrong, because if he steps into that cornerback 1 role, he automatically jumps up to one of the best corners in the league, because there's not a lot of guys who can do that, because you only really see that from like a Jalen Ramsey when AJ Boye wasn't great anymore, and Ramsey just goes in and is that guy. And again, I think he's the best corner in the league, so I'm comparing him to some very, very good competition. But Dylan, I completely agree. I think it's just going to be a struggle. It is going to be a struggle. It's going to be an uphill battle that I'm not sure he can climb. Again, I wish him the best, but I would say there may be a bit of regression in this year. But again, I feel like it's, you can't really blame him.
Then for our last defensive key player, and our last key player has been consistently one of the best tacklers in the NFL, and that's Roquan Smith. And I think if he has a good season, it kind of makes the Bears defense one of the better ones in the league. And if he kind of just peters out, plays average, this team's going to give up a lot of points. So he's really honestly the definition of a defensive key player, because it all runs through him. So I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's going to have a good season, which is why the defense is going to stand tall. But if he doesn't do well, he's the centerpiece. This defense falls apart. I know I just said that. I'm just emphasizing it.
Yeah, again, I mean, we see these young middle linebackers like Fred Warner, like Darius Leonard, like going in Devin Bush. They're the quarterbacks of their defense. He's 24, and he had 139 tackles in 2020, 4 sacks and 2 interceptions. He's phenomenal. He's really good. Rookie season, 100 tackles. And talking that, he's an underrated pass rusher. He's someone who can really get in that A gap, get in that B gap when they're rushing with 5. When he's not getting blocked and he gets to the quarterback, and he is, I think, rival for the best tackler in the NFL. He's a fantastic tackler, wrapping up running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. He is really good. And again, Dylan, someone who's good in coverage as well. He has it all. He's versatile, which we love to say. He's an all-around player. I think he'll be a linebacker for the future. I think he'll be one of the better ones. And I think right now, someone who's probably underrated and probably out of a lot of people's top 5 and may even mine, but I think he should be. And I think, again, it's those 3 guys like Johnson, Smith, and Khalil Mack. It's like if they don't play well, they're going to be bad. But if they do, this defense will be good, and I think they will. Roquan Smith, I do not see him having any kind of dip in form. It's a front 7 that is mostly the same. I think he'll be fantastic. I love Roquan Smith for this season. I think he'll do very, very well. But that was it for key players. That's probably the most key players ever talked about. There's a lot of key players in that team. But let's move on to the free agent impact. Not free agent players, the free agent. And that's arguably QB1 right now, Andy Dalton, bringing him over from Dallas Cowboys, from the Dallas Cowboys QB2 turn to QB1 now for Chicago. I guess it may change after training camp. But Dylan, do you like anything?
I do, actually. And
oh, wow.
At Cincinnati, Andy Dalton was consistently a top 15 quarterback, like in that 11 to 15. He had a little bit of regression, has something to do with the Cincinnati Bengals consistently ignoring their offensive line. So he got shipped off to Dallas, and in the games he played, he wasn't great. Again, with a team that ignored their offensive line. So now you go to Chicago. You're there to train Justin Fields, but also to get some game time, because he's not finished. He's still got time in him. He's still not that old. I think he's 32 now. Mm-hmm. So he's got some game in him. He's on a team that drafted an excellent lineman, who we'll get to later, and has an altogether relatively solid offensive line. Is he going to play against the best teams in the league? Yes. But has he done that before? Yes. So I don't think it's a bad move. I think with the quarterbacks on the market, it was actually the smartest move they could have made.
Yeah, and again, smart, but not smart. I would have been all in. Again, going for Deshaun Watson when I was saying they would have given up at least one of those key defensive players, at least, and some picks.
Nothing.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, thank God they didn't. But back then, my thing was when they were rumored, because they were heavily rumored to get Deshaun Watson. It was like your dad tells you you're going on a 2-week vacation to Hawaii, and then you go to the national park for one day. From Deshaun Watson to getting Andy Dalton, but then you got Fields, so at least you got some. At least now you got a 1-week vacation to like the Hamptons. So, like, I love my comparisons, but look, Dalton to me is kind of like the Cam Newton. We saw him do all right in Dallas. I think Cincinnati, he was good, but again, he's not in Cincinnati anymore. He's going to a Chicago Bears. But again, I mean, he's going to a Chicago Bears offense that has a good running back and a good receiver and a good tight end, Cole Kmet, and obviously Graham. So look, I hope the best for Andy Dalton. I don't expect much. I don't expect him to start through the whole season. I wouldn't be surprised if Fields somehow. I think we're going to see a lot more rookie quarterbacks starting earlier than people think, and I think Fields will be one of those. If not, because Dylan, there's no way that Dalton outplays Fields in rookie camp, or in non-rookie camp, in minicamp. I just don't see it again. Dalton's a starting quarterback, so we'll see. But that was the only free agent. They did not do much.
For the NFL draft, and we were just talking about it, Justin Fields, I had him as my second best player on the board. And while I think Penei Sewell is obviously better than him, he was
non-positional value.
Yeah,
if we're not accounting position.
I think that Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Trey Lance and than Zach Wilson. That's just me personally. I've thought that since the start, and I still think so. And I think a lot has been taken off of Justin Fields for the same reason that Lamar Jackson is constantly discouraged, and the same reason Kyler Murray will constantly be discouraged, because they run the football effectively. And it takes a little bit off their throwing ability, but the combination of that for me is so worth it. So duality in the quarterback is really key, and I think he's going to be an excellent player for the Bears for years to come. Any Bears fans, you're going to have a lot of trouble listening to the running back quotes. Just bear with it, and you'll be good.
Dylan never stops to throw in a little Lamar Jackson there, and he's not a Ravens fan. Let's just remember that.
Not.
But look, Justin Fields, I think, again, as more and more I think about it, I think he'll be better sooner than Zach Wilson will be, if that makes sense. I think if he starts early, I think he'll be a better. But again, I generally say something and then quickly turn back. But again, they have a really tough schedule, so I think it could be a really, really welcome to the NFL moment the entire season for Justin Fields, because they don't have a lot of easy games. They're in a tough division with the Vikings getting quite, a lot better. So look, Fields was really good at Ohio State. He has the arm. He has arguably the best arm in the draft. I think a lot of quarterbacks do. All the top 4 had fantastic arms. You saw his pro day. Lawrence. I mean, you can argue any of them. And you saw that throw rolling out to his left and throws an absolute bomb. You see that, Dylan? An absolute rocket down the field, and precise. And don't expect him to do that for the Bears, but again, it's that versatility. Like, he can run the ball effectively, like you said, and then he can get out of the pocket and throw well. So I think it's going to be first of all, I think it'll be a rude awakening, like welcome to the NFL, because they're going to play some tough teams. But I think if there's some quarterback, to me, Fields looks like the guy who has the most durability out of those top 4.
Yeah.
And I think that championship game against Clemson, or not championship, that playoff game against Clemson really showed that. So I think Fields will be great. But Dylan, this one's the one that I'm sure we don't have too much analysis for, but I think it was a great pick. Tevin Jenkins, who they got out of Oklahoma, offensive tackle. Steal. And he's mean. He's a mean guy. Anger. What's your analysis for the big dude?
I really wish Dan Campbell and the Lions took him, because that would be perfect to fit in there. But this isn't about them. He's just a really good run blocker, and I think it's going to help out David Montgomery a lot. Having him on that line is going to open a lot of space up for David Montgomery, who's a really elusive player, to just get into spaces and burst.
Something that the only hit I'll have on Penei Sewell, going back to your Dan Campbell quote, is that Penei Sewell doesn't finish blocks angrily. Tevin Jenkins does. A mean guy. Strong, really good at the point of attack, someone who you can pound. So Tevin Jenkins, again, going back to kind of your Dan Campbell quote, Penei Sewell, not someone who was very angry at the finishing his blocks, not very angrily. Tevin Jenkins reminds me of Mekhi Becton in terms of how he finishes blocks off. Like, yeah, look, again, Steele, there's not much analysis we can do on offensive linemen. We're not offensive linemen fanatics. We don't know too much. I know basic stuff, but, again, Steele. He's a guy in the trenches who will shore up that offensive line that lost Leno in the offseason. It was a great pick. I liked it. But that was it after several cuts that you have not seen later. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Keith McDermott, Dylan Shalom, The Sports Scoop. Do make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dylan, what do we want to get to?
1.5 thousand.
Okay. Million. You should go for that is a goal.
Goals. Come on.
Yeah, little goals first. But do make sure to as well follow us on social media and message Dylan_Shalom if you want that action, because he loves DMing people and having arguments over football. So make sure you guys go follow him and message him. He's only gotten one, so people don't want that smoke. But, we'll see.
People don't know it like that.
Yeah, but enough with my cringy comments. Let's continue on with the series. We'll continue on. Obviously, first video for this division, probably Packers, Lions, they're all coming next. Vikings next. So make sure to turn on the notification. We will be doing a prediction and preview for your NFL team. So turn on that notification bell so you do not miss a video. Keith McDermott, Dylan Shalom checking out. We'll see you next time.